Her family abandoned her for being pregnant, unaware that the baby's father is the most powerful CEO of the country. She was thrown out of her own home for carrying a child they called a shame. With nothing but faith and a newborn, she raised her son in poverty, believing the father chose power over love. Years later, fate pulls her into the very company run by the man blamed for destroying her family's life. But then, a small boy looks up at a billionaire and whispers words that stop the world cold. A hidden heir, a powerful enemy, and a truth that could ignite a corporate war. Was the man she hated really the villain? Or was he protecting them all along from something far worse? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The cicada's persistent hum filled the heavy summer air as Hannah Brooks stood motionless on the worn wooden porch of her childhood home. Her fingers clutched the small overnight bag until her knuckles turned white, while her other hand held a folded piece of paper that seemed to weigh as much as a brick. The medical report's crisp edges had softened from her constant handling throughout the day, its words confirming what she already knew. She was pregnant. Through the screen door, she could hear her parents' voices, pitched low but sharp with tension. They thought she couldn't hear them, but every word cut through the evening air with painful clarity. What will people say? Her father's voice trembled with barely contained fury. We raised her better than this. The shame of it. Lower your voice. Her mother whispered urgently. She might hear. Let her hear. My God, 30 years of building respect in this community, 30 years of being a model family, and now this? Hannah's throat tightened as she listened to their words slice through her remaining hope. The porch swing where she had spent countless summer evenings reading her Bible creaked softly in the breeze, a sound that had once meant comfort but now felt like a goodbye. She watched a bead of sweat roll down the side of her face, catching her reflection in the window. The young woman staring back at her looked familiar, yet strange, still wearing her Sunday best, but with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Taking a deep breath that did little to steady her nerves, Hannah finally pushed open the screen door. The familiar squeak announced her presence, causing the heated conversation in the living room to stop abruptly. Her parents stood like statues in the middle of the room. Her father's face was dark with anger, while her mother wrung her hands in that nervous way she had whenever conflict arose. The family photos on the walls seemed to stare down at them, witnesses to this moment that would change everything. I need to tell you something, Hannah said, her voice stronger than she felt. She held up the medical paper, watching it tremble slightly in her grip. Though I think you already know. Her father's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching beneath his skin. Do you have any idea what this will do to us? To our standing in the church? I'm sorry, Hannah whispered, though the words felt hollow even to her. I know this isn't what you wanted for me, but isn't what we wanted. Her father's voice rose, filling the room. We wanted a daughter who respected herself, who respected God's word. Not this disgrace. Her mother made a small sound, like a wounded animal, but said nothing. She stood slightly behind her husband, eyes fixed on the carpet, shoulders curved inward as if trying to make herself smaller. You need to leave, her father said, each word falling like a hammer blow. I won't have this shame under my roof. Hannah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Daddy, please, don't call me that. His voice was ice now, frozen and brittle. You are no longer my daughter. Leave before night falls. Hannah turned to her mother, seeking any sign of support, any hint of the warm embraces that had once soothed every hurt. But her mother wouldn't meet her eyes, instead studying her own twisted fingers as if they held some secret escape from this moment. The silence stretched between them like a living thing, heavy with unspoken words and shattered dreams. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily, counting down the moments of her last minutes in this house. With trembling fingers, Hannah tucked the medical paper into her bag. Each movement felt mechanical, as if she was watching someone else pack up the fragments of her old life. The family photos on the walls seemed to mock her now, smiling faces frozen in happier times, times that would never come again. She walked to the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors she had helped her mother polish countless times. The sound echoed in the silence, each step marking her path toward exile. At the threshold she paused, turning one last time. "I love you both," she said softly, the words falling into the void between them. No response came, only the steady tick of the grandfather clock and her mother's muffled sob broke the silence. Hannah stepped out into the gathering dusk, the screen door closing behind her with a final snap. The street she had played on as a child stretched before her, familiar houses lined up like silent judges. The sidewalk that had led her to school, to church, to friends' homes now led her into uncertainty. As darkness crept across the sky, Hannah walked away from everything she had ever known. Her sensible shoes carried her past the Johnsons' house where she had babysat their children, past the maple tree where she had learned to ride her bike, past the corner where the ice cream truck used to stop. Each step took her further from home, though she had no destination in mind. The weight of her overnight bag grew heavier with each block, but it was nothing compared to the weight in her heart. The medical paper in her bag seemed to burn against her side, a constant reminder of why she was now walking these streets alone as night descended. The humid air clung to her skin, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, a summer storm approaching. But Hannah kept walking, one foot in front of the other, her mind spinning with questions she had no answers for. Where would she sleep tonight? What would tomorrow bring? How would she care for the life growing inside her? The familiar street lamps began to flicker on, casting long shadows across her path. Each pool of light marked another step away from everything she had known, everything she had been. The cicadas continued their endless song, uncaring that her world had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. In the growing darkness, Hannah Brooks walked on, carrying not just her overnight bag, but the weight of her father's rejection, her mother's silence, and an uncertain future. The street that had always led home now stretched endlessly before her, leading somewhere she couldn't yet see. The first drops of rain fell softly, dotting the pavement around the bus bench where Hannah sat clutching her overnight bag. The streetlight above cast a harsh glow, creating a small island of light in the darkness. She checked her phone, 2:37 in the morning, and the battery was nearly dead, just like her hopes of finding somewhere to stay tonight. As thunder rumbled overhead, Hannah's mind drifted back to another rainy evening, 8 months ago. She had been working late at her family's small investment firm, Brooks Financial, when Ethan Cross first walked into her life. He had appeared in the doorway of her office, tall and composed in his perfectly tailored suit, asking if anyone was still there. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he had said, his voice quiet but commanding. "I was meant to meet with Thomas Brooks, but I seem to have missed him." "My father left an hour ago," Hannah had replied, taking in his earnest brown eyes and the way he stood, confident but not imposing. "I'm Hannah Brooks, the firm's compliance officer. Can I help you?" A small smile had softened his serious expression. "Ethan Cross, I was hoping to discuss a potential partnership." The memory blurred as fresh rain fell harder, forcing Hannah to seek better shelter under the bus stop's plastic awning. She remembered how that first meeting had stretched into hours, their discussion flowing naturally from business to personal interests. Ethan had surprised her with his depth of knowledge about local history, his genuine interest in her opinions, and most of all, his gentle humility, despite his position as CEO of Cross Ventures. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the empty street. In her mind, she saw their first real date, a quiet dinner at a small Italian restaurant where Ethan had confessed his initial nervousness about asking her out. "I wasn't sure it would be appropriate," he had admitted, his usual self-assurance giving way to endearing uncertainty. "Given the potential business relationship between our companies." Hannah had teased him then, feeling bold in the warm candlelight. "Is that why it took you 3 meetings to finally ask?" The rain fell harder now, matching the heaviness in her heart. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, like something precious being cultivated. Ethan had never pushed, never rushed. He brought her coffee during long work days, remembered small details she mentioned in passing, and always treated her with a respect that made her feel truly seen. Another memory surfaced, Ethan teaching her to play chess in his office one evening, his patience endless as she learned the moves. "Life is like this game," he had said, his fingers lingering on a knight piece. "Every move has consequences, and sometimes the most powerful piece can be the most vulnerable." How ironic those words seemed now. Hannah wiped away tears that mingled with the rain on her cheeks. She remembered the day everything changed, 3 months ago, when the headlines broke. Cross Ventures in hostile takeover bid. Her father had burst into her office, face ashen, clutching a newspaper. "Did you know about this?" he had demanded, throwing the paper on her desk. "Did your precious Ethan tell you he was planning to destroy us?" She hadn't known, hadn't suspected. The takeover had been swift and merciless. Brooks Financial, along with several other small firms, had been swallowed up in what the media called an aggressive market consolidation. Ethan had vanished from her life as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving no explanation, no goodbye, just a deafening silence and unanswered calls. Hannah shivered, pulling her light jacket tighter around her shoulders. The memory of those weeks was still raw. Watching her father's life's work crumble, seeing their family name dragged through financial news headlines. She had defended Ethan at first, certain there must be some explanation, some misunderstanding. But as days turned to weeks with no word from him, her faith had wavered. The last time she had seen him was through the glass walls of his office tower, standing at the window, high above the street. She had gone there, desperate for answers, but security had stopped her in the lobby. Looking up, she had seen him turn away from the window, disappearing into the corporate fortress he had chosen over her. Now, sitting alone in the pre-dawn darkness, Hannah's hand drifted to her stomach. The reality of her situation pressed in from all sides. Homeless, familyless, and carrying a child whose father had proved power meant more to him than love. Her phone buzzed one final time before the screen went black. Dead battery, dead end. The rain began to ease, leaving behind a heavy mist that shrouded the street in grey. In a few hours, the city would wake up. People would hurry to their jobs. Life would go on as if her world hadn't just imploded. She could call Ethan. His number was still memorized, burned into her heart along with everything else about him. One call could change everything. But as the first hint of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Hannah made her decision. She wouldn't call. She wouldn't give him the chance to reject her, reject them again. Whatever power he held over her heart, she wouldn't let him hold power over their future. She had seen what power meant to Ethan Cross, had felt the cold reality of his choices. The early morning mist swirled around her feet as she stood, gathering her bag and what remained of her dignity. Somewhere in this city, she would find a way forward. Somewhere, there would be a place for her and her child to begin again. The morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting colourful shadows on the worn wooden pews of St. Michael's Church. Hannah stood in the doorway, her overnight bag clutched close, uncertain whether to step inside. The small neighbourhood church looked nothing like the grand building where she had grown up. This one was humble, with peeling paint and mismatched flowers in clay pots by the entrance. Mrs. Eleanor Martinez, arranging hymnals in the front pew, looked up at the sound of the heavy door creaking. Her practiced eye took in everything: the girl's rumpled clothes, the protective way she held herself, the shadows under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. "Come in, dear," Eleanor called out, her voice warm and steady. "You look like you could use a cup of tea." Hannah hesitated, then took a tentative step forward. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude. Her voice cracked, and she swallowed hard. "You're not intruding at all," Eleanor assured her, already moving towards the small kitchen attached to the church hall. "I always keep the kettle on during morning prayers. Sit down, rest those feet." The kitchen was tiny but spotless, with cheerful yellow curtains and the smell of fresh bread. Eleanor bustled around, pulling out mugs and leftovers from yesterday's church potluck. "Eat," she said firmly, setting a plate of still good casserole in front of Hannah. "Then we can talk. Or not talk. Whatever you need." Tears welled up in Hannah's eyes at this simple kindness. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, and her hands shook as she picked up the fork. As summer faded into fall, Hannah found herself returning to St. Michael's again and again. Eleanor never pushed for explanations, but always had a meal ready and a gentle word to share. Sometimes Hannah would help clean the church or tend to the small garden out back, earning enough to rent a room for a night or two. October brought crisp winds and morning sickness that left Hannah weak and dizzy. She found work where she could, filing papers at a small insurance office, helping at a local daycare, anything that would pay cash and ask few questions. The pregnancy was becoming harder to hide, and each new job lasted a shorter time than the last. "The Lord provides," Eleanor would say, pressing sandwiches and vitamins into Hannah's hands. "You just have to be willing to accept the help He sends." Some nights, when she couldn't find a couch to sleep on, Hannah would curl up in the church basement on an old camping mat Eleanor had forgotten to put away. Those nights she would rest her hand on her growing belly and whisper prayers into the darkness, not for herself, but for the tiny life depending on her. November brought early snow and a series of odd jobs that barely kept Hannah fed. She cleaned houses, organized files, and even spent a week addressing Christmas cards for an elderly woman who paid her in home-cooked meals and warm socks. Her body ached constantly now, the weight of the baby straining her back, but she refused to give up. "You're the strongest person I know," Eleanor told her one icy morning, watching Hannah struggle to her feet after morning prayers. "But strength doesn't mean you have to do everything alone." December passed in a blur of cold days and uncertain nights. Hannah moved between temporary shelters and church basements, carrying everything she owned in one worn bag. The baby moved constantly now, as if trying to remind her that she wasn't truly alone. January brought a job at a small diner where the owner, Martha, took one look at Hannah's condition and insisted she work only short shifts. "Can't have you on your feet too long," Martha declared, sliding extra portions onto Hannah's break time plate. "That little one needs proper feeding." As winter deepened, Hannah's due date drew closer. Eleanor and Martha had worked together to find her a spot at a local women's shelter where she could rest properly in the final weeks. The shelter was cramped but clean, and for the first time in months, Hannah had a real bed to sleep in. On a cold February morning, the first contractions began. Eleanor arrived at the hospital within minutes of Hannah's call, her familiar presence a comfort through the long hours that followed. The delivery room was bright and sterile, so different from the warm, shadowy spaces of St. Michael's, where Hannah had found refuge so many times. 26 hours of labor tested every ounce of strength Hannah had left. But as the first cry of her son filled the room, something new bloomed in her heart. Not just love, but a fierce determination that overwhelmed everything else. The nurse placed the tiny bundle in her arms, and Hannah looked down at her son's face for the first time. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a shock of dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. "Hello, Adam," she whispered, the name coming to her naturally. Eleanor stood quietly by the bed, her eyes bright with tears as she watched this moment of creation, not just of a new life, but of a new kind of strength in the young mother before her. Hannah traced her finger along Adam's soft cheek, memorizing every detail of his perfect face. "I promise you," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion but absolutely certain. "You will never ever feel unwanted. You are loved. You are precious. You are exactly who you're meant to be." In that moment, holding her son close while Eleanor's steady presence watched over them both, Hannah felt something settle in her soul. The path ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer lost. She had found her purpose, her reason, her truth, all wrapped up in this tiny person who now depended on her for everything. The late August morning dawned bright and warm as Hannah Brooks helped her 5-year-old son adjust his brand-new backpack. Adam's dark eyes sparkled with excitement, his small hands clutching the straps of the blue and grey bag that still looked a bit too big for his shoulders. "Remember what we talked about?" Hannah asked, kneeling to straighten his collar. Their modest apartment's living room was filled with golden morning light, making Adam's carefully combed hair shine. "Yes, Mama." He nodded solemnly. "Be kind to everyone. Listen to the teacher. And remember, Jesus loves me." Hannah smiled, her heart swelling with pride and a touch of anxiety. "That's right, sweetheart. And I'll be right here when you get home." The walk to Riverside Elementary took 15 minutes, their footsteps echoing through the quiet neighborhood streets. Adam skipped beside her, pointing out everything that caught his attention: a cardinal perched on a fence, a cat watching from a window, the crossing guard's bright orange vest. At the school entrance, Hannah knelt again, pulling Adam into a tight hug. "I love you so much," she whispered, fighting back tears she didn't want him to see. "Love you too, Mama," Adam replied cheerfully, already turning toward his new adventure. She watched him walk into the building, his little shoulders straight and confident, until he disappeared from view. The apartment felt emptier than usual when Hannah returned. She had 2 hours before her shift at the diner started, just enough time to throw in a load of laundry and prep dinner for later. Their life ran on a careful schedule. It had to, with Hannah juggling 3 jobs to make ends meet. Mornings and early afternoons, she waited tables at Martha's Diner, the same place that had helped her through her pregnancy. Evenings, she cleaned offices in the business district. Weekend mornings, she helped with the church daycare program, where Adam could stay with her while she worked. It wasn't easy, but they managed. Their apartment might be small, but Hannah had made it a home. Bright curtains hung in the windows, and Adam's artwork decorated the walls. A worn but comfortable couch held pride of place, covered with a colorful quilt Eleanor had made them. The coffee table displayed Adam's favorite children's Bible, well thumbed and loved. That evening, after picking Adam up from the after-school program, they sat at their small kitchen table eating mac and cheese with hot dogs, Adam's favorite dinner. His eyes were bright as he told her about his day. "Ms. Thompson said I'm a good reader," he announced proudly. "And I made a friend named Marcus. His favorite color is blue, too." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Hannah smiled, watching him eat with enthusiasm. "I'm so glad you had a good first day." Adam was quiet for a moment, pushing a piece of hot dog around his plate. "Marcus has a dad," he said finally. "He picks him up from school sometimes." Hannah's heart tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "All families are different, remember? Some have mums and dads, some just mums, some just dads. God makes each family special in its own way." "But I have a dad somewhere, right?" Adam looked up at her, with those searching eyes that sometimes seemed too wise for his years. "You said he had to go away before I was born." Hannah reached across the table to squeeze his small hand. "Yes, you do have a father. He had to leave before he knew about you. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices." "Was he nice?" Adam asked softly. Hannah thought carefully before answering, as she always did when these questions came up. She never wanted to lie to her son, but she also needed to protect him from complications he was too young to understand. "He was very kind," she said finally. "And smart. You have his eyes, you know." This seemed to satisfy Adam for the moment, and he returned to his dinner with renewed interest. But Hannah's mind drifted to memories she usually kept locked away. Ethan's gentle smile, his quiet strength, the way his eyes had crinkled at the corners when he laughed. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on Adam's cheerful chatter about his new classroom. Later that night, after stories and prayers and tucking Adam into bed, Hannah stood in his doorway watching him sleep. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across his peaceful face. In these quiet moments, she could see traces of Ethan in their son's features, the shape of his nose, the curve of his cheek, those expressive dark eyes. She hadn't spoken Ethan's name aloud in over 5 years, not even in her prayers. The corporate scandal that had torn them apart had faded from the news, but the pain still lingered. Sometimes she wondered if Ethan ever thought about her, if he had any idea about the amazing little boy who shared his blood. Adam stirred in his sleep, clutching his stuffed bear closer. Hannah's heart ached with love and uncertainty. She had always tried to answer his questions about his father honestly but carefully, protecting him from the complicated truth of abandonment and betrayal. But as he grew older and more perceptive, she wondered if her protection was becoming a different kind of burden. Was she right to keep the full truth hidden? To never speak Ethan's name? To let Adam believe his father simply had to leave rather than chose to leave? The questions weighed heavily on her heart as she watched her son's peaceful sleep. The room was quiet except for Adam's soft breathing and the distant sounds of city traffic. On his bedroom wall, a children's prayer hung in a simple frame. "God is love." The words seemed to glow in the moonlight, a reminder of the faith that had carried them through so many difficult days. Hannah pulled Adam's door partly closed, leaving it open just enough for the hallway light to peek through, just as he liked it. In the stillness of their home, she carried her questions with her like a familiar weight, wondering, as she often did, if the line between protection and concealment was thinner than she thought. Monday morning arrived with a mix of early autumn sunshine and crisp air. Hannah adjusted her simple black blazer, a thrift store find she saved for interviews, and checked her reflection one last time in the hallway mirror. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, her makeup minimal but professional. She had to make a good impression today. "You look pretty, Mummy," Adam said from where he sat at their small kitchen table, finishing his cereal. "Thank you, sweetheart." Hannah smiled, dropping a kiss on top of his head. "Now remember, Mrs. Martinez will pick you up from school today. I have that new job to start." "The cleaning one?" Adam asked, milk dripping from his spoon. "Yes, but it's a supervisor position. That means I'll be in charge of making sure everything gets cleaned properly." She tried to keep the worry from her voice. The temporary position would pay significantly better than her current jobs, and they desperately needed the money. Winter was coming, and Adam was growing so fast he needed new clothes. After dropping Adam at school, Hannah took 2 buses to reach the gleaming office tower in the heart of downtown. The building stretched toward the sky, its windows reflecting the morning light like mirrors. She straightened her shoulders and walked through the revolving door into the massive lobby. The security guard directed her to check in at the front desk. As Hannah approached, her eyes drifted to the large bronze letters mounted on the wall behind the reception area. Cross Global Industries. Her heart stopped. The world seemed to tilt sideways as memories crashed over her like a wave. Ethan, the name she hadn't spoken in 6 years, the company that had destroyed her family's business during that brutal takeover. She gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady herself. "Mom, can I help you?" The receptionist's voice brought her back to the present. "Yes, Hannah's throat felt dry. "I'm here to start work with the cleaning service. Hannah Brooks." While the receptionist checked her paperwork, Hannah's mind raced. She couldn't work here, not in his building, not where she might see him. But the reality of her bank account and Adam's needs crashed through her panic. They needed this job. She couldn't let old wounds cost them this opportunity. The morning passed in a blur of training sessions and paperwork. Hannah threw herself into learning the protocols and schedules, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach every time she saw the company logo. She hadn't seen Ethan, and the building was huge. Maybe she never would. But fate had other plans. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Martinez. "Sorry, emergency with my mother. Can't pick up Adam today." Hannah's heart sank. Her shift didn't end until 7 o'clock, and it was too late to find another sitter. After several frantic calls, she realized she had no choice. She would have to bring Adam to work with her. "It's just for a few hours," she told him as they rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor. "You can do your homework in the break room while I finish my rounds. Please stay where I put you, okay?" Adam nodded solemnly, clutching his backpack. "I promise, Mommy." The evening cleaning crew was already at work as Hannah showed Adam to the employee break room. She set him up at a table with his homework and snacks, then hurried to check on her team's progress. 10 minutes later, she returned to find the break room empty. "Adam?" Panic seized her chest as she called his name. "Adam!" A cleaning cart rattled by, pushed by one of her new staff members. "Oh, I saw a little boy heading that way," the woman said, pointing down the hallway, toward the executive offices. Hannah ran, her sensible shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The executive wing was supposed to be empty at this hour. Most senior staff left by 5 o'clock. She rounded a corner and saw light spilling from the partially open door of the executive lounge. Through the gap, she could see Adam standing in the middle of the room, and across from him, frozen behind a sleek desk, stood Ethan Cross. Time seemed to stop. Ethan looked exactly as she remembered, tall and distinguished, his dark hair now touched with silver at the temples. He was staring at Adam with an expression of complete shock. And then Adam's small voice broke the silence, clear as a bell. "Mommy says, you're my daddy." Hannah's world narrowed to this moment, this impossible collision of past and present. She watched as Ethan's face drained of color, his eyes moving from Adam's face to her son's dark eyes, so like his own, to the familiar shape of the nose they shared. The truth hung in the air between them, undeniable and irrevocable. In the heavy silence, Hannah could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as she watched Ethan Cross come face to face with the son he never knew existed. The silence that followed Adam's declaration lasted only seconds before it was shattered by the thunder of approaching footsteps. 2 security guards burst into the executive lounge, their boots squeaking against the polished floor. "Mr. Cross, sir, we noticed unauthorized movement on this floor and—" The first guard stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene before him. Ethan raised one hand, his face a mask of careful control. "Everything's fine." His voice was steady, but Hannah could hear the strain beneath it. "Please leave us." "Sir, protocol requires—" "I said leave us!" This time, there was steel in his tone. "All of you out, now." The guards exchanged uncertain glances but backed away, closing the door behind them. The click of the latch echoed in the renewed silence. Adam, sensing the tension, moved closer to Hannah. She wrapped her arm around his shoulders protectively, feeling him trembling slightly against her side. "Adam, sweetheart," she said softly. "Can you wait just outside the door for Mummy? I need to talk to Mr. Cross for a minute." Her son looked up at her with worried eyes, then over at Ethan, who still hadn't moved from behind his desk. After a moment's hesitation, Adam nodded and slipped out into the hallway. As soon as the door closed behind him, Ethan spoke. "How old is he?" "6. Hannah answered, her voice tight. Ethan's fingers pressed against his desk until his knuckles turned white. 6 years. 6 years, and you never told me?" The anger that had been simmering beneath Hannah's surface for years finally boiled over. "Told you? When exactly should I have told you, Ethan? When you were orchestrating the takeover that destroyed my family's company? Or maybe when you disappeared without a word?" "I never knew you were pregnant," he said, his voice rising slightly. "How could I have known? You didn't stick around long enough to find out, did you?" Hannah's laugh was bitter. "1 minute you were there, making promises about our future, and the next, nothing. Just headlines about how Cross Global had acquired Brooks Manufacturing in a hostile takeover." Ethan came around the desk, his movements careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Hannah, listen to me. That's not how it happened. I tried to stop the takeover when I found out—" "Stop." Hannah held up her hand. "I don't want to hear your excuses. Not after 6 years. Not after everything I've been through." "Everything you've been through?" Ethan's controlled facade cracked slightly. "What about what our son has been through, growing up without knowing his father?" "Don't you dare!" Hannah hissed. "Don't you dare try to make me feel guilty. You have no idea what it's been like. My father threw me out when I told him I was pregnant. I had nothing, no home, no family, no support. I've worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. Where were you then?" The color drained from Ethan's face. "Your father threw you out?" "Yes, and now here you are, probably planning to throw us out too. Well, save yourself the trouble. We'll be gone by morning." "That's not—" Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I need to know for certain. You understand that, don't you? I need to verify a DNA test." Hannah's voice was ice. "Look at him, Ethan. Look at his eyes, his nose, the way he holds himself. But fine. You want proof? Let's get proof." Ethan reached for his phone, his fingers flying over the keypad. "Dr. Matthews?" he said when someone answered. "I need you to come to the office immediately. Yes, now. And bring a DNA testing kit. This requires absolute discretion." While they waited, the silence between them grew thick and heavy. Hannah paced the length of the room, while Ethan stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Neither of them spoke when Dr. Matthews arrived, a distinguished older man who performed the test quickly and quietly, first swabbing Ethan's cheek, then calling Adam in to do the same. "The results will be ready by morning," Dr. Matthews said as he packed up his equipment. "I'll handle this personally, Mr. Cross. Complete confidentiality." As the doctor left, Hannah gathered Adam's backpack. "We're leaving now. I'll be back tomorrow for my shift, and then you can tell me what you intend to do about all this." "Hannah, wait." Ethan started forward, but stopped when she flinched away from him. "No, we've said enough for one night." She took Adam's hand, noting how quiet and confused he looked. "Say goodbye, Adam." "Goodbye, Mr. Cross," Adam said softly, looking back over his shoulder as Hannah led him from the room. The ride home in the taxi was silent. Adam fell asleep against her side, exhausted by the evening's events. Hannah stared out the window at the passing streets, her mind racing. She knew what would happen next. Ethan would try to erase them, to protect his precious company's reputation. He would probably offer her money to disappear, to keep quiet about Adam's existence. As she carried her sleeping son up to their small apartment, Hannah felt tears burning behind her eyes. She had been naive to think she could work at Cross Global without consequences. Now everything she had built, every careful protection she had put in place for Adam, was crumbling. She lay awake all night, watching the shadows move across her ceiling as the sky gradually lightened outside. When her alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning, she hadn't slept at all. She got Adam ready for school, trying to act normal, trying not to let him see her fear. Walking into the Cross Global building that morning felt like walking to her execution. She knew that somewhere in this tower of glass and steel, Ethan Cross was holding the results of that DNA test. She knew he was probably already planning how to deal with this inconvenient truth, this threat to his perfectly ordered world. As she changed into her work uniform in the employee locker room, Hannah's hands shook. She had survived being disowned once before. She had built a life from nothing. She would do it again if she had to, would go anywhere, do anything to protect her son. But as she stepped out to begin her shift, Hannah couldn't shake the crushing weight of defeat. She had lost this battle before it even began. Ethan Cross had destroyed her family's legacy once before. Now he would do it again, this time more personally than ever. The early morning sun cast long shadows across Ethan's office as he stared at the manila envelope on his desk. Dr. Matthews had hand-delivered it moments ago, his expression carefully neutral. Now, alone with the truth he'd demanded, Ethan found his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He opened the envelope slowly, pulling out the clinical pages inside. His eyes scanned the medical terminology until they landed on the conclusion. 99.999% probability of paternity confirmed. Ethan sank into his chair, the paper crackling in his grip. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes, not tears of anger or denial, but of profound grief for all the years lost. 6 years. He had missed 6 years of his son's life. Adam's face flashed in his mind, those familiar eyes, that serious little expression so like his own. How had he not known? How had he lost so much without even realizing what was being taken from him? Standing abruptly, Ethan walked to the wall of windows overlooking the city. The skyline stretched out before him, a testament to everything he'd built, everything he'd thought mattered. Now it all felt hollow, meaningless compared to what he'd unknowingly sacrificed. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Cross, the archived files you requested from legal storage have arrived." "Send them in," he replied, his voice rough. 3 boxes were wheeled in on a cart, records from the hostile takeover 6 years ago that had destroyed Hannah's family business and torn them apart. He'd never fully investigated what happened back then, too focused on saving his own company from collapse. But now, with the weight of his son's existence pressing on his conscience, he needed answers. Hour after hour, Ethan combed through old documents, emails, and meeting minutes. His office grew darker as the day waned, but he barely noticed, too absorbed in connecting dots he should have seen years ago. There, an email chain showing Victor Hale had been secretly buying up shares of both companies months before the crisis. Here, evidence that Hale's team had planted false information about impending bankruptcy. And finally, buried in legal correspondence, proof that Hale had orchestrated the whole thing, manipulating both sides to weaken them before swooping in for the kill. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He'd been played, used as an unwitting weapon against Hannah's family. No wonder she hated him. While he'd been fighting to keep his own company afloat, Hale had been pulling strings behind the scenes, making sure everyone believed Ethan was responsible for the destruction. His phone buzzed. A message from HR confirming a new position had been created in their community outreach department. It was a strategic role, one that would utilize Hannah's experience while keeping her close enough to protect. He knew she would see it as manipulation, but he had to try. The next morning, Hannah sat stiffly in a chair across from his desk, her face a mask of careful neutrality as he explained the new position. Community Outreach Coordinator? She repeated, her tone skeptical. And this has nothing to do with the DNA results? The position needs to be filled. Ethan said carefully. Your background in small business operations and your connection to local communities make you an ideal candidate. The salary is triple your current rate, with full benefits. Hannah's eyes narrowed. So this is your solution? Buy me off with a cushy job? This isn't about buying anyone off, Ethan replied, keeping his voice level despite the pain her words caused. It's about creating an opportunity that benefits everyone involved. Everyone involved meaning you and your company's reputation? Hannah stood, pacing to the window. What happens when people find out your new community outreach coordinator has a 6-year-old son who looks exactly like you? Ethan watched her, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly despite her fierce expression. That's not my concern right now. What matters is providing stability and security for Adam. At their son's name, Hannah's composure cracked slightly. She turned back to face him, conflict clear in her eyes. And if I refuse? Then you refuse, Ethan said simply. But I hope you'll consider it. Not for me, but for Adam's future. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and years of misunderstanding. Finally, Hannah picked up the contract from his desk. I'll need time to review this, she said, her voice carefully controlled. Of course, take all the time you need. As Hannah left his office, Ethan watched her go, knowing she was walking away, believing he was trying to control her, to buy her silence. The truth, that he was desperately trying to protect them both while he investigated Victor Hale's role in their past, would have to wait. Later that afternoon, Hannah's signed contract arrived on his desk. Her acceptance was a small victory, but Ethan felt no triumph. Instead, he felt the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on his shoulders. She had accepted this position, believing she was stepping closer to an enemy, planning to expose what she saw as his corruption. He tucked the contract into his desk drawer next to the DNA results and the growing file of evidence against Victor Hale. Soon, he would have enough proof to confront the real villain in their story. Until then, he would have to bear Hannah's distrust and find a way to build a bridge to the son he had only just discovered. The autumn leaves drifted past Hannah's office window as she organized another community outreach event. 3 weeks had passed since she'd accepted the position, and despite her initial suspicions, the work itself was meaningful. She found herself actually making a difference in people's lives, something that both pleased and confused her. Her desk phone buzzed. Ms. Brooks, Mr. Cross would like to confirm tomorrow's afternoon meeting with Adam. Hannah's stomach tightened. These supervised visits had become part of their weekly routine, carefully scheduled and monitored. Yes, confirm for 3 o'clock, please. Through the glass walls of her office, she could see Ethan in the distance, speaking with a maintenance worker. Something about his posture caught her attention, the way he listened intently, nodding with genuine concern. A few minutes later, she watched him make a phone call, and by the end of the day, she learned that the worker's daughter had received an anonymous scholarship to attend college. This wasn't the first time she'd noticed such things. Last week, it was a security guard's medical bills mysteriously paid. The week before, a cafeteria worker's car repairs taken care of. Each time, the help came anonymously, but Hannah had begun to recognize the pattern. That evening, as she collected files from her desk, a cleaning crew member named Maria approached her. "Ms. Brooks, I wanted to thank you for mentioning my son's situation to Mr. Cross." Hannah frowned. "I'm sorry." "The after-school program? My Roberto was on the waiting list, but somehow he got in. They said an anonymous donor covered the fees for several families." Maria's eyes shone with gratitude. "I never mentioned it to Mr. Cross directly, but you must have told him." "I didn't." Hannah started, then stopped. She remembered mentioning Maria's struggles during a department meeting, but she hadn't specifically asked for help. Yet somehow, the situation had been resolved. The next afternoon, Hannah watched through the glass walls of the children's playroom as Adam showed Ethan his latest drawing. The space had appeared shortly after Adam's first visit, a room filled with books, educational toys, and art supplies, supposedly part of the company's new family-friendly initiative. "Look," Adam said, holding up his artwork. "It's a robot that helps people who are sad." Ethan knelt beside him, examining the crayon creation with genuine interest. "That's very thoughtful. Why did you choose to make it help sad people?" "Because sometimes people are sad, but they don't want to tell anybody," Adam replied, his innocent wisdom making both adults pause. "Like Mommy sometimes." Hannah's heart clenched. She hadn't realized Adam noticed her quiet moments of grief. Later that evening, after Adam had gone home with his regular sitter, Hannah found herself drawn to the company archives. She'd been spending more time there lately, driven by a need to understand the truth about the past. As she dug through old files, a folder caught her eye. Inside were dozens of emails and proposals from 6 years ago, all from Ethan, all attempting to find alternative solutions to the corporate crisis. She read proposal after proposal for joint ventures, restructuring plans, and compromise solutions that could have saved both companies. Her hands trembled as she read an urgent email from Ethan to the board. "There must be another way. This hostile takeover will destroy families, careers, and community trust. I propose an immediate meeting to discuss alternative solutions." The timestamp showed it was sent just days before everything fell apart, before her family lost everything, before she lost him. Unable to contain her confusion any longer, Hannah marched to Ethan's office. It was late, but she knew he would still be there. He always was. "You tried to stop it," she said without preamble, dropping the folder on his desk. "All this time I thought you were behind everything, but you were fighting against it." Ethan looked up slowly, his expression guarded. "Yes, I tried. I failed." "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were responsible?" He stood, moving to the window. "By the time I realized what was really happening, it was too late. The damage was done. You were gone." "What was really happening?" Hannah pressed. "There's more, isn't there? Something you're not telling me." Ethan turned to face her, conflict evident in his eyes. "Hannah, some truths are dangerous, especially now with Adam involved. Don't use our son as an excuse," she said, but her voice lacked its usual anger. "I've seen you these past weeks, the way you help people quietly, expecting nothing in return, the way you are with Adam. You're not the monster I made you out to be, are you?" "I made mistakes," Ethan admitted, "but hurting you, hurting your family, was never my intention. I just couldn't see the bigger picture until it was too late." Hannah sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "All these years I've held on to this hatred, this certainty that you deliberately destroyed everything I loved. But watching you with Adam, seeing how you treat others when you think no one is looking—" She met his gaze. "I'm not sure I know what to believe anymore." "Believe in what you see now," Ethan said quietly. "The past is complicated, but how I care for our son, that's simple truth." Hannah stood, gathering her composure. "I should go. Adam's waiting." As she walked to her car that evening, her mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. The Ethan she'd hated for 6 years was becoming harder to reconcile with the man she observed daily, the one who remembered every detail Adam shared, who helped others without seeking credit, who looked at their son with such profound love and regret. Had she been wrong? Had her pain and anger blinded her to a truth far more complex than she'd imagined? The certainty she'd clung to for so long was crumbling, leaving her unsure of everything except one fact. The man she'd painted as a villain in her mind bore little resemblance to the one she watched day after day, quietly trying to make amends. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the office windows as Hannah organized files on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Most employees had gone home, leaving the building eerily silent. She jumped when Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression unusually tense. "Do you have a moment?" he asked softly. "There's something you need to know." Hannah nodded, following him to his private office. The space felt different on weekends, more personal, less imposing. Family photos she'd never noticed before sat on a shelf behind his desk. "I should have told you this years ago," Ethan began, his voice heavy with regret. He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the desk between them. "What happened to your family's business? It wasn't just a hostile takeover. It was orchestrated by Victor Hale." Hannah's breath caught. "Victor Hale? The man who now runs half our competitors' operations, yes." Ethan spread out documents across his desk. He engineered everything. The stock manipulation, the false reports, the smear campaign against your father's company. He made it look like I was behind it all. Hannah's hands trembled as she picked up the papers. Financial records, emails, and surveillance photos painted a devastating picture of calculated destruction. He had people on the inside. Ethan continued. "They planted evidence, altered documents, silenced anyone who tried to speak up. By the time I understood what was happening, the damage was done. He'd positioned everything to make me look responsible." "But why?" Hannah whispered, her voice breaking. "Why target us?" "Your family's company held patents he wanted, but more than that, he wanted to prove he could destroy anything in his path." Ethan's jaw tightened. "When I tried to fight back, he threatened to expose corruption that would have sent innocent people to prison, people who had no idea what was really happening." Hannah sank into a chair, documents scattered across her lap. "All these years, I blamed you. I hated you." "I know." Ethan's voice was gentle. "And I let you, because keeping you angry at me was safer than letting you become a target." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Ethan sat down across from her, his shoulders heavy with the weight of long-held secrets. "About 2 years after everything fell apart, I saw a photo of you with Adam. He was just a toddler, but—" He swallowed hard. "I knew. The moment I saw him, I knew he was mine." "You knew?" Hannah's voice cracked. "All this time. I started watching over you both from a distance, making sure you had work opportunities, that your apartment building stayed affordable, that Adam's preschool got anonymous donations for new playground equipment." His eyes met hers. "I couldn't be there openly without putting you at risk, but I tried to help however I could." Tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks as years of pain and misunderstanding crashed over her. "I was so alone," she whispered, "so scared. I'm sorry." The words seemed to tear from his throat. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I let you believe the worst of me. I thought I was keeping you safe, but I hurt you deeply in the process." Hannah pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking with 6 years of pent-up grief. Ethan moved, closer, hesitating before placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. The simple touch broke something inside her, and suddenly she was sobbing, for her lost family, for the years of struggling alone, for the truth she'd never known. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I didn't know. I should have found another way." Ethan murmured, "I was trying to protect you from Hale, but I caused so much pain." They sat together as the sun set, sharing pieces of the past they'd never spoken aloud. Ethan described his desperate attempts to stop the takeover, his horror at realizing Hale's true intentions, his years of quiet intervention in their lives. Hannah talked about her pregnancy, her father's rejection, the lonely nights wondering how she'd provide for their child. As evening settled over the city, they moved to the small executive lounge where Adam had first confronted Ethan. Their son slept peacefully on the couch, having spent the afternoon drawing pictures in Ethan's office while they talked. Hannah watched Adam sleep, his small face peaceful in the dim light. "He has your determination," she said softly. "The way he tackles problems, that's all you. He has your heart." Ethan replied, "Your compassion. The way he notices when others are hurting." Their eyes met in the shadows, years of misunderstanding and pain giving way to something softer, more tentative. Ethan reached out slowly, taking Hannah's hand in his. She didn't pull away. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "This changes everything, but we'll figure it out." Ethan promised, "Together this time." Adam stirred slightly in his sleep, mumbling something about robots and butterflies. Both parents smiled, and in that shared moment of tenderness, Hannah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not just for herself, but for all of them. She squeezed Ethan's hand gently, watching their sleeping child. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in 6 years, she didn't feel alone in facing it. The truth had finally set them free to heal, to forgive, and perhaps to build something new from the ashes of the past. Monday morning arrived with a cold drizzle that matched the growing storm inside Cross Global Industries. Hannah stepped into the lobby, her new security badge pinned neatly to her blazer, only to find people staring and whispering behind their hands. Her phone buzzed with a news alert, and her heart stopped as she read the headline, "Secret love child of Cross Global CEO. Sources reveal corporate scandal." The article was filled with carefully crafted half-truths and innuendos, painting her as a calculating gold digger who had manipulated her way into the company. Anonymous sources claimed she had orchestrated her son's chance meeting with Ethan to force recognition. The comments section was already filling with cruel speculation. Hannah's hands shook as she made her way to her office. Co-workers who had been friendly last week now avoided eye contact. Some gathered in small clusters, their conversations dropping to whispers as she passed. Ms. Brooks, her assistant Jenny, met her at the door with wide eyes. "The board has called an emergency meeting. They want you there in 15 minutes. The boardroom was a fortress of dark wood and tension. The directors sat like stern judges, their faces masks of disapproval. Victor Hale occupied a chair near the head of the table, his expression one of carefully crafted concern. Ethan stood at the window, his back rigid with contained fury. "Ms. Brooks," the board chairman began, "serious allegations have been brought to our attention regarding improper conduct and potential exploitation of company resources." Hannah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "These accusations are completely false." "Are they?" Victor's voice was smooth as oil. "We have documentation showing your strategic placement within multiple departments, culminating in a very public scene with your son. The timing seems calculated." "I never," Hannah started, but the chairman cut her off. "Mr. Cross, as CEO, you need to address these allegations immediately. The media is already running with the story." Ethan turned from the window, his face a mask of professional detachment that made Hannah's heart crack. She knew what was coming before he opened his mouth. "I categorically deny any personal relationship with Ms. Brooks or her child," he stated flatly. "These rumors are baseless and potentially damaging to the company's reputation. I recommend immediate termination of her employment to prevent further speculation." The words fell like ice between them. Hannah stood frozen, understanding the impossible choice he faced, but feeling the betrayal cut deep nonetheless. "Security will escort you out," the chairman said. "Your personal items will be shipped to you." 2 guards appeared at her side. Hannah walked out with her head high, past the staring faces of her co-workers, past the desk where she'd built a new life, past the spot where Adam had first met his father. She didn't let herself cry until she was alone in her car. The day crawled by in a haze of pain and worry. Hannah's phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters and old acquaintances seeking gossip. She turned it off, trying to shield Adam from the storm, but the modern world had other plans. That evening, as she prepared dinner, she heard a small sob from the living room. Adam sat hunched over her tablet, tears streaming down his face as he read comments on a news site. "They're saying mean things about you, Mommy," he whispered. "They're calling me bad names. They say I ruined everything." Hannah's heart shattered. She swept Adam into her arms, holding him close as he cried against her shoulder. "None of this is your fault, baby. Not one bit. But if I hadn't talked to Daddy that night, listen to me." Hannah pulled back to look into his eyes, so like his father's. "You did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups do mean things because they're scared or angry, but that's not your fault. I heard Mrs. Chen at school telling another teacher that we're troublemakers." Adam hiccuped. "And Tommy's mum won't let him come to my birthday party anymore." Hannah rocked him gently, her own tears falling into his dark hair. All the faith she'd rebuilt over the years, all the trust in God's plan, felt like ashes in her mouth. How could she explain to her innocent child why people could be so cruel? How could she make him understand that love shouldn't hurt like this? "I wish I'd never found out about Daddy," Adam whispered, his small body shaking with sobs. "I wish we could go back to before." Hannah couldn't answer. She just held him tighter, feeling his tears soak through her shirt, wondering how many more times her child would have to pay for the sins and fears of others. In the growing darkness of their small apartment, she rocked her son and prayed for strength she wasn't sure she had anymore. The cruel comments and accusations flickered on the abandoned tablet screen, casting shadows on the wall like the ghosts of all their broken dreams. Outside, the rain continued to fall, matching the quiet tears of a mother and child whose world had been shaken to its core. The morning sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church, painting the wooden pews in soft ribbons of color. Hannah stood at the entrance, her hand resting on the weathered door frame where she had first sought refuge all those years ago. The familiar scent of wood polish and old hymnals wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Sister Margaret looked up from arranging flowers at the altar, her lined face breaking into a warm smile. "Hannah, is that really you?" Hannah's composure cracked at the sound of that gentle voice. Before she knew it, she was walking down the aisle, tears streaming down her face. Sister Margaret met her halfway, pulling her into a tight hug that smelled of lavender and fresh bread. "Oh, my dear girl," the older woman whispered. "Come to the kitchen. Some things are better discussed over tea." In the small church kitchen, where Hannah had once sorted donated canned goods during her pregnancy, Sister Margaret busied herself with an old ceramic teapot. The routine was exactly as Hannah remembered. 2 cups, 2 saucers, honey on the side. "I saw the news," Sister Margaret said quietly, setting the steaming cup in front of Hannah. "But I'd rather hear the truth from you." Hannah wrapped her hands around the warm cup, drawing comfort from its heat. Everything's falling apart, sister. Just when I thought we were finding our way, when Adam was finally getting to know his father. Her voice broke. Now he's hurting, and I can't protect him. Sister Margaret settled into her chair, her wise eyes full of understanding. Tell me everything. For the next hour, Hannah poured out the whole story. The corporate takeover, Victor's manipulation, Ethan's discovery of Adam, and yesterday's brutal board meeting. The morning light crept across the linoleum floor as she spoke, her tea growing cold and forgotten. I thought I was so sure about everything, Hannah confessed. I thought I knew who the villains were, who had betrayed us. Now I don't know what to believe anymore. Sister Margaret reached across the table to squeeze her hand. That's often how truth works, dear one. It doesn't arrive all at once like a lightning bolt. It unfolds slowly, like a flower opening to the sun. But Adam is suffering now. The things people are saying about him, about me, in God's time, not ours. Sister Margaret reminded her gently. Remember when you first came here? You were certain your world had ended. But look at the beautiful life you built, the wonderful boy you raised. Hannah wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. I'm trying to keep my faith, sister, but it's so hard when everything seems to be working against us. Perhaps, Sister Margaret said thoughtfully. Everything is actually working towards something better than you can see right now. Trust isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing there are answers even when we can't see them. Across town, in his private office at Cross Global Industries, Ethan was building a case. Spread across his desk were years of financial records, email correspondence, and confidential memos. His laptop displayed a complex web of shell companies and hidden transactions, all leading back to Victor Hale. Sir, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Davidson from legal is here. Send him in. James Davidson entered, carrying another stack of files. I found what you asked for, the original documentation from the Brooks family business takeover. Ethan took the files, his jaw tightening as he read. Victor left a trail. He always does. His pride won't let him completely cover his tracks. Sir, Davidson said carefully, pursuing this could have serious consequences. The board might see it as a personal vendetta. It is personal, Ethan replied quietly. But that doesn't make it any less true. He spread out the new documents, adding them to his growing collection of evidence. Years of Victor's careful manipulation were becoming clear. The orchestrated business collapse, the planted evidence suggesting Ethan's involvement, the systematic silencing of anyone who questioned the narrative. The timing of yesterday's leak wasn't coincidental. Ethan mused. Victor's getting nervous. He knows I'm close to something. Close to what, exactly? Ethan pulled up an old email chain. Look at these timestamps. The day before the Brooks takeover was announced, Victor met with 3 board members who later resigned. All 3 received substantial offshore payments through a company that traces back to his wife's family trust. Davidson whistled softly. That's illegal as hell. And it's just the beginning. Ethan's voice was grim. I've found similar patterns in 6 other acquisitions. Victor's been building his power base for years, using the same tactics over and over. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Hannah was trying to protect their son from the fallout of his public denial. The thought made his chest ache. Sir, Davidson said hesitantly, if you pursue this, Victor will fight back hard. He could expose your relationship with Ms. Brooks and Adam. The board might demand your resignation to avoid scandal. I know. Ethan turned back to his desk, his decision already made. But I'm done letting fear of consequences dictate my choices. I've stayed quiet too long, trying to protect everyone by playing it safe. Look where that got us. He gathered the most damning evidence into a single file. Prepare the legal documents. I want everything ready to file by tomorrow morning. Even if it costs you the company. Ethan thought of Adam's face that first night in the executive lounge, looking up at him with complete trust. He thought of Hannah's tears yesterday, of all the years stolen from them by lies and manipulation. The company isn't worth the price of staying silent, he said firmly. Truth costs what it costs. I'm ready to pay. Davidson nodded and gathered his notes. I'll have the paperwork ready by 8 tomorrow. After his lawyer left, Ethan sat alone in his office as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. On his desk, the evidence of Victor's crimes lay in neat stacks, each page representing a choice between self-preservation and justice. The safe path would be to back down, to protect his position and power. But as he looked at a recent photo of Adam on his phone, the boy's smile so much like his own at that age, Ethan knew there was really no choice at all. Some things were worth any price. He began organizing the files for tomorrow's legal filing, his movements deliberate and certain. The time for half measures and careful maneuvering was over. Whatever the cost, whatever the consequences, the truth would finally come to light. The morning after Ethan's decision to pursue legal action, the wheels of justice began turning with deliberate precision. In his corner office at Cross Global Industries, he worked methodically through stacks of documents, each one adding another piece to the puzzle of Victor's deception. 3 different shell companies. Ethan muttered, marking connections on a whiteboard that stretched across one wall, all leading back to the same offshore account. His assistant knocked softly, entering with fresh coffee. Mr. Davidson called. He's filed the initial motion with the court. Thank you, Sarah. Any word from the board? They've scheduled an emergency meeting for next week, Thursday at 9 in the morning. Ethan nodded, his expression grave. 7 days to prepare everything. 7 days until he either exposed years of corruption or lost everything he'd built. Across town, Hannah sat at her small kitchen table, helping Adam with his math homework. She'd established a new routine. Breakfast at 7, school by 8, homework right after dinner. Structure helped Adam feel secure, even as whispers and speculation swirled around them. Mommy? Adam said, looking up from his multiplication tables. Tommy at school asked why my last name is different from my daddy's. Hannah's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. What did you tell him? I said families come in lots of different ways. Adam's pencil moved carefully across the paper. Like how Joey has 2 mummies, and Maria lives with her grandmother. Tears pricked at Hannah's eyes. That's exactly right, sweetheart. You're very wise. Later that evening, after tucking Adam into bed, Hannah's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Can we talk? They met at a quiet coffee shop several blocks from both their homes. Ethan looked tired, his usual crisp appearance slightly rumpled from long hours at the office. The legal filing is done, he said quietly, stirring his untouched coffee. Davidson thinks we have a strong case. Hannah nodded, her own cup warming her hands. How is Adam handling everything at school? He's incredibly resilient. Hannah replied, but he notices more than he lets on. I'm trying to keep things as normal as possible. I've been thinking. Ethan hesitated. After the board meeting next week, regardless of what happens, I want to acknowledge him publicly, as my son. No more hiding. Their eyes met across the table, years of pain and misunderstanding slowly giving way to cautious understanding. The next few days fell into a rhythm of preparation and waiting. Ethan spent long hours with his legal team, building an airtight case against Victor. Each evening, he received brief updates about Adam from Hannah, small moments and achievements that both warmed and pained him, reminders of all he'd missed. On Monday, Davidson brought more evidence, emails proving Victor had deliberately misled the board about the Brooks family business valuation. He created artificial debt, Davidson explained, made it look like the company was failing when it wasn't. Ethan's fists clenched on his desk. Add it to the filing. Every piece matters now. Tuesday brought a warning from Sarah. Sir, there are rumors. The board members who usually support Victor have been meeting privately. Let them meet. Ethan replied. The truth doesn't change based on who believes it. Wednesday afternoon, Hannah took Adam to the park, watching him play with other children while she sat on a bench nearby. Her phone contained a short message from Ethan. Everything's ready for tomorrow. Thank you for trusting me with this. She watched Adam laugh as he chased butterflies, his joy untouched by the adult complications swirling around him. Be careful. She texted back. Not just for us, for yourself too. That evening, as darkness settled over the city, Ethan remained alone in his office. The evidence against Victor was organized in precise folders, ready for tomorrow's presentation. The legal documents sat in his briefcase, each page representing years of hidden truth finally coming to light. Ethan stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. In less than 12 hours, he would either expose a decade of corporate corruption or lose everything he'd built. The company he'd devoted his life to, the reputation he'd earned through years of ethical leadership, all of it hung in the balance. But as he thought of Adam's innocent question that first night, Mommy says, you're my daddy, he knew the real stakes were far more personal than corporate power or professional legacy. Slowly, Ethan lowered himself into his office chair. For the first time in years, he bowed his head in prayer. The words came hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty. Lord, he whispered into the quiet office, I don't know if I deserve to ask for anything. I've made so many mistakes, stayed silent when I should have spoken. Let fear guide me instead of truth. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But tomorrow isn't about me. It's about a little boy who deserves to know his father without shame. About a woman who's carried burdens alone for far too long. About setting right what should never have been wrong. His voice grew stronger, more certain. Whatever happens tomorrow, whether I keep this company or lose everything, let me be worthy of their trust. Let the truth be enough. The office remained silent after his last words faded. Outside, the city continued its nighttime rhythm, unaware of the changes tomorrow might bring. Ethan sat in the darkness, waiting for morning, ready at last to face whatever consequences truth might bring. The morning sun cast long shadows through the towering glass windows of Cross Global Industries' executive floor. Board members filed into the mahogany-paneled conference room one by one, their faces tense with anticipation. The air felt thick with unspoken questions. Ethan stood at the head of the long table, his posture straight but not rigid. The evidence folders lay before him in precise order, each document representing a piece of the truth he'd carried for too long. Victor Hale sat opposite him, wearing his usual superior smile, though his eyes darted occasionally to the folders. Thank you all for coming. Ethan began, his voice steady. What I'm about to present will be difficult to hear, but it's time for the complete truth about events that have shaped this company's past and will determine its future. He opened the first folder, displaying financial records on the large screen behind him. 10 years ago, Cross Global Industries acquired Brooks Manufacturing through what appeared to be a standard hostile takeover. The reality was far different. Ethan methodically laid out the evidence. Fabricated debt statements, manipulated market analyses, falsified communications. With each revelation, Victor's smile grew thinner. Mr. Hale personally orchestrated a campaign to destroy Brooks Manufacturing. Ethan continued, not because it was failing, but because its success threatened his vision of corporate leadership. He paused, meeting Victor's gaze directly. A vision that, as these internal memos show, was heavily influenced by racial prejudice. Murmurs rippled through the room as Ethan displayed Victor's private communications. Racist comments about the Brooks family, strategies specifically designed to undermine minority-owned businesses, plans to maintain traditional corporate culture, code for discrimination that was now exposed in stark black and white. Victor's face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, a desperate attempt to, "I'm not finished." Ethan cut in quietly. "There's more." The next hour unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of truth. Ethan presented witness statements from former employees who'd been silenced, bank records showing suspicious transfers, documentation of threatening messages sent to anyone who questioned Victor's methods. The board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to shock to anger. Several began taking furious notes. Others just stared at Victor, who had stopped trying to interrupt, and now sat in rigid silence. Finally, Ethan said, his voice softening slightly, "There's a personal matter that needs addressing." He took a deep breath. 6 years ago, I discovered I had a son. His mother is Hannah Brooks, daughter of the family whose business we acquired. I chose not to acknowledge him publicly at the time, a decision I deeply regret. The room went completely still. Victor's face twisted into a sneer. "So that's what this is about. Protecting your little—" "My son's name is Adam." Ethan interrupted firmly. "And this isn't about protecting anyone except the truth. I'm acknowledging him now not as leverage or defense, but because he deserves to know his father stands for honesty, no matter the cost." The board chairman, Thomas Reynolds, cleared his throat. "These are extremely serious allegations, Mr. Cross, and the personal revelation—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What exactly are you asking of this board?" "I'm not asking anything," Ethan replied. "I'm fulfilling my duty as CEO to report criminal activity and ethical violations. The evidence has been provided to proper authorities. Mr. Hale's actions were not only morally wrong, but illegal. The choice before this board is simple. Stand with truth or continue enabling corruption." Victor surged to his feet. "This is absurd! You can't possibly—" The door opened. 2 police officers entered, followed by federal agents. "Victor Hale," one officer announced. "You're under arrest for corporate fraud, extortion, and criminal conspiracy." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Victor being led away in handcuffs, his threats echoing down the hallway. Board members huddled in intense discussion. Phones buzzing with incoming messages as news began to spread. Ethan remained standing, his posture unchanged. He'd done what needed to be done. Whatever came next, whether he kept his position or lost everything, the weight of hidden truth no longer pressed on his shoulders. The board chairman approached him. "We'll need time to process all this, but preliminary votes suggest full support for your actions, Mr. Cross. The company's reputation may take a hit, but integrity matters more than stock prices." Ethan nodded. "Thank you, if you'll excuse me." He gathered his papers carefully, tucked them into his briefcase, and walked out of the conference room. The morning sun still streamed through the windows, but it felt different now, cleaner somehow, more hopeful. In the elevator, Ethan loosened his tie slightly. Years of carefully maintained control could finally ease. The truth was out. About Victor, about Adam, about everything. It felt like taking a full breath after years of shallow breathing. The lobby was buzzing with activity. News vans had already gathered outside, reporters positioning themselves for live updates. But Ethan didn't head toward the main entrance. Instead, he walked through a side door into a small courtyard. Standing in the fresh air, Ethan closed his eyes briefly. The morning sun warmed his face. Somewhere across the city, Adam was probably getting ready for school, innocent of the morning's events. Soon, very soon, Ethan would be able to acknowledge him proudly, without shadows or whispers. The burden was lifted. Not just the weight of Victor's crimes or corporate responsibility, but the personal weight of hidden truth. For the first time in years, Ethan stood in full daylight, nothing left to hide. The changes came gradually, like spring thawing winter's frost. In the first week after Victor's arrest, Ethan worked tirelessly to stabilize the company. He replaced corrupt executives with people known for their integrity, established new transparency protocols, and created an ethics oversight committee with real power to investigate wrongdoing. The business press buzzed with speculation and criticism, but Ethan remained steady. Each morning, he arrived early to review reports and meet with department heads. Each evening, he made time to call Adam, listening to stories about school and helping with math homework over the phone. "Daddy?" Adam asked one evening, his voice crackling through the speaker. "Are you still coming to my soccer game on Saturday?" "Wouldn't miss it for anything," Ethan replied, smiling at how natural the word "daddy" now felt. "I'll be there early to help you warm up." By the second week, Ethan began the delicate process of reviewing all of Victor's past acquisitions. His team discovered dozens of small businesses that had been unfairly pressured or manipulated. One by one, Ethan reached out to make things right. The Brooks family business stood at the top of his list. One sunny morning, he invited Hannah to his office, spreading out papers across his desk. "I've had our lawyers draw up complete restoration papers," he explained, watching her face carefully. "The business will be returned to your family's name, with additional compensation for lost revenue. You'll have full control of operations." Hannah stared at the documents, her hands trembling slightly. "This was my father's life's work," she whispered. "He built it from nothing. And now you can rebuild it even stronger." Ethan said softly, "With modern systems and expanded reach, if you want my help, I'm here. But the business will be entirely yours." Tears filled Hannah's eyes as she signed the papers. "Thank you," she managed. "Not just for this, but for everything." The restoration of the Brooks family business made headlines in the local papers. The story caught the attention of Hannah's parents, who had been wrestling with their own regrets for years. One evening, as Hannah was helping Adam with homework at their kitchen table, a knock came at the apartment door. She opened it to find her mother standing there, looking small and uncertain. "I saw the news," her mother said hesitantly. "About the business, and I've been watching from a distance, seeing how well you've done with Adam, how strong you've been." She paused, tears spilling over. "I'm so sorry, Hannah. We were wrong, so terribly wrong." Hannah stood frozen for a moment, years of pain warring with the ache of missing her family. Then Adam appeared beside her, peering curiously at the grandmother he'd never met. "Are you my grandma?" he asked directly, in that innocent way of his. "Mommy has your picture in her room. She looks at it sometimes when she's sad." Something in Hannah's heart softened at her son's words. She stepped back, opening the door wider. "Would you like to come in, Mom?" The reconciliation wasn't instant or easy. There were long conversations, painful memories to address, and trust to rebuild. Hannah's father took longer to come around, his pride making it harder to admit his mistakes. But Adam's presence helped bridge the gap, his natural warmth and forgiveness showing them all a better way. As spring turned to summer, positive changes bloomed everywhere. The Brooks family business reopened with updated systems and a loyal customer base eager to return. Hannah split her time between learning the operations and maintaining her role at Cross Global, where she now headed community outreach programs. Adam thrived in ways that made both his parents' hearts swell. No longer carrying the weight of secrets, he bounded through life with infectious joy. His teachers noted improved confidence. His soccer coach praised his leadership on the field, and his smile, always bright, now shone without shadows. Ethan attended every school event, parent-teacher conference, and soccer game. He and Hannah developed an easy co-parenting rhythm, their past hurt gradually healing through shared focus on their son's happiness. One warm evening, after Adam's championship soccer game, the three of them walked through a quiet park. Adam ran ahead to the playground, leaving his parents on a bench watching the sunset paint the sky in gentle pinks and golds. "He's growing so fast," Hannah mused, watching their son navigate the monkey bars with determination. "He is," Ethan agreed. Then, after a thoughtful pause, "Hannah, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." She turned to look at him, noting the unusual note of uncertainty in his voice. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just quiet sincerity in his eyes as he opened it to reveal a classic diamond ring. "I love you," he said simply. "I love our son, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you both how much you mean to me. Will you marry me?" Hannah's breath caught. In the distance, Adam's laughter carried on the evening breeze. The setting sun warmed their faces. And in that moment, all the pieces of their broken past finally fell into place, making something new and beautiful. Tears sparkled in her eyes as she smiled. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." On the playground, Adam looked over and saw his parents hugging. He grinned, sensing something special in the moment, and went back to his climbing with the simple happiness of a child who knows he is deeply loved. The evening light softened around them, wrapping the little family in its gentle glow as they sat together on the park bench, talking quietly about the future they would build together. 3 months passed in a gentle blur of planning and preparation. The October morning dawned crisp and clear, painting the small church garden in shades of gold and amber. It was the same church that had sheltered Hannah during her darkest days, making the location deeply meaningful rather than merely scenic. Inside the modest chapel, only 40 guests filled the wooden pews. There were no elaborate flower arrangements or expensive decorations, just simple bouquets of white roses and autumn leaves gathered by Adam himself. Soft morning light filtered through the stained glass windows, casting warm patterns across the worn carpet runner. 6-year-old Adam stood proudly between his parents at the altar, wearing a new navy suit that matched his father's. He couldn't stop grinning as he held both their hands, occasionally squeezing them with barely contained excitement. Hannah wore an elegant but simple ivory dress, its clean lines reflecting the honest beauty of the moment. Her mother sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Behind her, Hannah's father watched with a mix of regret and pride, his stern facade softening as he observed his daughter's quiet joy. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. When it came time for the vows, Ethan spoke first, his usual composure wavering slightly with emotion. "Hannah," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed chapel, "I promise to spend every day making up for the time we lost, to always choose truth over pride and family over power, to be the husband and father you both deserve." He looked down at Adam, including him in the promise. "You've taught me what real strength looks like, not in boardrooms or business deals, but in forgiveness and faith." Hannah took a deep breath, squeezing Adam's small hand for courage before speaking her own vows. "Ethan, I promise to trust in the truth, even when it's harder than doubt, to believe in second chances and the power of healing, to build our future on hope instead of fear." Her voice grew stronger as she continued, "And I promise that our family will always be founded on love, understanding, and grace." Adam beamed up at both of them, his natural innocence adding pure joy to the solemn moment. When the minister asked for the rings, he proudly produced them from his pocket, handling them with exaggerated care that made the guests smile. As Ethan slipped the simple gold band onto Hannah's finger, she felt the weight of past pain finally lifting. This wasn't an ending written by bitterness or revenge, but a new beginning crafted from wisdom and forgiveness. After the ceremony, everyone gathered in the church fellowship hall for a modest reception. There was home-cooked food, heartfelt toasts, and the kind of genuine laughter that can't be orchestrated by even the most expensive wedding planner. Adam darted between guests, proudly introducing himself as their son, no longer feeling any need to hide or explain. He especially loved telling the story of how he'd first recognized his father in that executive lounge, speaking truth with a child's perfect clarity. As the afternoon went on, Hannah found herself standing slightly apart from the celebration, watching her new family with quiet wonder. Ethan was showing Adam how to properly cut a piece of cake, both of them concentrating with identical expressions of serious focus. Her parents were chatting comfortably with Ethan's mother, bridges being rebuilt one conversation at a time. The scene before her wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments, careful pauses, and healing relationships. But it was real, authentic, built on a foundation of hard-won truth rather than glossy pretense. Looking down at her wedding ring, Hannah felt something settle in her soul. This wasn't the fairy tale ending she might have dreamed of as a young girl. It was better, because it was earned through courage, strengthened by adversity, and shaped by grace. She had walked through rejection without letting it define her, faced poverty without losing her dignity, protected her child while learning to trust again. And now, watching Adam laugh as Ethan twirled him around the makeshift dance floor, Hannah realized she had found something more precious than mere happiness. She had found peace. Not the shallow peace of compromise or the bitter peace of revenge, but the deep, lasting peace that comes from choosing love over fear, truth over pride, and forgiveness over resentment. As if sensing her thoughts, Ethan looked up and caught her eye across the room. His smile held understanding, respect, and a promise for their future. Adam waved excitedly, beckoning her to join their dance. Hannah moved towards them, her heart full. This was her family, not perfect, but perfectly real. And in that reality, she had finally found her true home. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, warming the simple fellowship hall with its gentle glow. Children's laughter mingled with soft conversation and music. And in the midst of it all, Hannah danced with her husband and son, holding close the precious gift of a love that had been lost, found, tested, and made stronger through it all. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the community park as Hannah sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching Adam play in the open field. Golden light caught his dark hair, so like his father's, as he chased butterflies through the tall grass, his laughter carrying on the warm breeze. Not far away, Ethan stood with a small group of local business leaders, discussing plans for a new youth center. His voice carried the same quiet authority it always had, but now it held something more, a warmth that came from knowing exactly who he was and what mattered most. Hannah smoothed her simple cotton dress, remembering how different life had been just 2 years ago. Back then, she'd carried the weight of secrets and survival alone. Now, watching her son play freely while her husband worked to make their community better, she felt the profound difference between mere survival and truly living. Adam's joyful shout drew her attention as he discovered a patch of wild daisies. He immediately began gathering them with intense concentration, his small fingers carefully selecting each bloom. This was who he'd always been, naturally loving, unfailingly honest. Even in their hardest times, his pure heart had been their compass. The community leaders began dispersing, shaking hands with Ethan as they left. He caught Hannah's eye and smiled, the kind of smile that still made her heart skip even after all they'd been through. Or perhaps because of all they'd been through. Looking up at the vast blue sky, Hannah closed her eyes and offered a quiet prayer. "Thank you," she whispered, "for turning our trials into triumph, for showing us that truth matters more than pride, and love is stronger than fear. Thank you for giving us the courage to rebuild what was broken." The prayer continued in her heart as she watched Adam racing back towards them, his fist full of slightly crushed daisies. His face glowed with the simple joy of giving as he approached, already calling out, "Mommy! Daddy! Look what I found!" This was their reward for choosing truth, not wealth or power or perfect happiness, but something far more precious. They had found wholeness, real, lasting peace, the kind that comes from facing hard things together and letting love lead the way forward. As Adam reached them, practically bouncing with excitement to share his floral treasures, Hannah stood from the bench. She stepped toward her family with quiet confidence, no longer afraid of what tomorrow might bring. Their foundation was built on faith now, strengthened by honest love, and illuminated by the kind of truth that sets people free. Ethan reached down to lift Adam up, accepting the slightly wilted daisies with the same grave attention he gave to million-dollar contracts. Adam beamed at them both, secure in the knowledge that he was deeply loved and completely accepted. The late afternoon light wrapped around them like a blessing as they stood together in the peaceful park. This was their story now, not a tale of loss and betrayal, but one of redemption and grace, of second chances and the courage to take them, of faith strong enough to overcome fear and love deep enough to heal old wounds. "Ready to head home?" Ethan asked softly, still holding Adam and his precious bouquet. Hannah nodded, her heart full of quiet gratitude. As they began walking together across the sun-drenched field, she knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where they were meant to be. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real, honest, whole. The path ahead was clear now, lit by truth and paved with love. And they would walk it together, step by step, day by day, guided by faith and strengthened by grace. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.